mind giving those councillors in there a hurry up? Tony, you're acting for the chair. Yeah, thank you. I love that. Oi!
And then it's just one click forward.
Yeah, you guys. Oi!
Yep, sure.
Get in here. He has. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you.
You're on your lonesome today, but
I am.
you can take us all on, so you're fine. So you know the rules. We have 10 minutes and leave some time for questions if you wish. Otherwise, you can take your entire 10 minutes. There's no problem with that.
Sure.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Kia ora and good afternoon. So I'm Carolyn Neville. I'm the Marketing and Operations Manager for Business Hawke's Bay and the Hawke's Bay Business Hub, and I'm here to present around Business Hawke's Bay's submission to the annual plan. The purpose of our submission this year was to demonstrate the role and value of Business Hawke's Bay in regional economic development. And so we thought we would share with you the key deliverables that Business Hawke's Bay are working on for the coming year. Our year runs 1st of April to the 30th of March, so some of these activities are already underway. Hello, Alan. Don't worry, I'm not expecting you to read that. That document was submitted, and what I'm going to do is just run you through a quick overview of the work plan for the coming year and highlighting some of the key new initiatives. If you would like to read it, it's there in more detail afterwards. So one of our key focus areas, the first one, is leading the continuous improvement and sustainability of the Business Hub. And we're taking a regional approach to the delivery of services beyond the bricks and mortar of the building. Now, my role is a new role that's been partially funded by MB for 2 years, and my role is specifically around ensuring the sustainability of the hub. So there are some actions here, and there are two key focus actions really around the hub. One is an externally focused around regional customer delivery and what we can do for businesses, and the other one is for the hub an internal operational focus. So I'll just run you through very quickly some of the key areas out of this regional focus. The first one is around connection points. So the hub becoming a connection point for New Zealand business leaders within the Hawke's Bay business community. Now, we have already had some good examples of this. One recently was when Christopher Luxon was here for a business speaker seminar at the conference centre. We invited him through the contacts that I've made last year on another project I was working with to come and talk to a series of business leaders, and he came and presented for an hour and a half and talked about sustainability but also some of the key concerns for business people, and we had people like the airport, representatives from the port actually as well, and a number of other organisations. Another area of this is the hub and spoke delivery model. So while the hub is a physical bricks and mortar presence, what we're looking to do is to extend that so that we actually can offer services right across the region, into Wairoa, into Central Hawke's Bay, into Hastings, into Napier, and online as well. So that's what the hub and spoke delivery model is. We're looking at increased Māori business engagement with the hub services, and there's a program starting to be put in place for that. Another area is co-working and shared spaces. We've already initiated this. This was around building an online directory and a database of shared working spaces that are available within the region. We have some plans, a program being put together for startup support. 2 levels really, from the businesses who are proprietary startups, so the mum and dad businesses who are around job creation and a very small startup, through to the accelerator type startup businesses that are already well resourced and well funded and who have potential for growth. So we're looking at both ends of the spectrum there. Something that I have been working on and is already initiated is a regional online business events calendar, and in coming months you should see a lot more promotion of that. And that's around a calendar much the same as Hawke's Bay Tourism have a calendar of events. This is a business-focused calendar of events around business after 5 events, workshops, training seminars, all sorts of programs that may be of value to businesses. And that's all being done through Event Finder and just pulling it through on an API so anybody can access that information. We also have I'm putting in place a funding partner program, which is around ensuring the ongoing viability and sustainability of the hub. And that's the 16 organisations who are currently represented at the Business Hub. And a key focus there for the coming year is on the 3 C's across the bottom around connect, collaborate and community, and delivering further value. There's still room at the inn, so we do have more desk spaces available, and that's something else that I'm working on as well, is to get more partners into the hub. Key focus area 2 very quickly is the internal side of the hub, and it's about operational systems and efficiency, looking at data gathering, how we can use that data and share that data among hub members. The visitor management system and room booking system are key to part of that. Third area in our plan is basically business as usual. It's managing the core operational responsibilities and fulfilling the contractual obligations of our funding agencies and partners. So in there it's around things like financial reporting, key performance indicator reporting, which the visitor management system and the booking system will allow us to be much more specific in the businesses who are using the hub services and where they're from, scale of businesses, all sorts of information there, and our contractual obligations such as MB with councils, Callaghan Innovation and other key partners. This is around, number 4 is around the Matariki strategic framework and delivery model for regional economic development. There are 10 initiatives where Business Hawke's Bay has been identified as the lead agency or co-lead agency for delivery. That's actually on the front of our strategic plan, so you've got that document there. And there are 9 further initiatives where Business Hawke's Bay has been identified as a key partner in delivery. So that's 19 actions in total where we have a role in the strategy. Now, the work plan that we've delivered here acknowledges the fact that there are changes in what is proposed within the regional economic development and the delivery model of that. But the work plan that we're providing you or have written is deliverable whatever model we're under, whether we are part of a larger organisation or as part of Business Hawke's Bay. Key area 5 is around identifying and supporting existing businesses that are wanting to grow. All of the hub initiatives that I ran through earlier are around supporting that as well. But we do have a couple of key support and education programs that are being developed for businesses that are wanting to grow in that high performance work area. And we're also working in collaboration with EIT on a business growth and future skills research project, which is around looking at demand for what jobs will be in demand and what areas will be in demand in the future within Hawke's Bay. Key area 6 is around becoming a beacon for investment of new business and skilled migrants in specific sectors. So in particular, we're looking at the global market opportunity for premium goat meat. My colleague Catherine Rusby, the Food and Beverage Program Manager, is doing some key work in this area. Out of a study that was done, or research that was completed last year on behalf of Business Hawke's Bay, by Frost and Sullivan, premium New Zealand goat meat was identified as a potential, an area with the highest potential to succeed in the region. And so Catherine's been doing some further work on working on the capabilities and potential participants from on-the-ground suppliers to the processors to the market end of this. And there are a couple of new business sectors that we're exploring, one in conjunction with the councils, with Regional Council and Hastings through Great Things Grow Here, Napier City Council, Central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa, are all interested in the agribusiness proposition for Field Days 2018. So tomorrow we're actually going as a group to Field Days to explore what the opportunities are. And then also wholesale distribution, particularly in the homeware retail, looking at relocating some of those wholesale distribution businesses. So goat, sheep, dairy supply chain in Hawke's Bay. So this is an ongoing project that Catherine's been working on with New Zealand Dairy Products. It's a $100 million investment. She's also looking at broadening that out now, so developing alternative strategies to attract additional processors. This, the goat, sheep, dairy is a real opportunity for Hawke's Bay, and it's looking at the range of people who will be able to input into that. She's also facilitating existing goat dairy farms to explore other products based on goat sheep dairy and move them further up the value chain. So she's been working with tuki goats, for example, to so that they might achieve a greater margin. And in Catherine's area as well, the Hawke's Bay food and beverage sector, she has an ongoing support for food and beverage businesses. She's working on capability development, networking and advising for business growth. She's a member of the steering committee considering Food Innovation Centre for Hawke's Bay, and she's also got a series of seminars and workshops scheduled at the Business Hub for food and beverage businesses, which they're quite targeted in their capability development for food and beverage. And then this is a little bit in my area, so around promoting greater innovation, productivity and agility in Hawke's Bay. And so we've launched what we're calling Tech Hawke's Bay, an event series. This was launched 2 weeks ago now with a morning of talks at the Business Hub. And this is an ongoing series with a range of events through the coming 12 months. It came out of Tech Week NZ, which was a national event, and we've brought it right back to Hawke's Bay. So the ongoing series of events are around trying to showcase a business, or bringing in a speaker or a local speaker who has a really big picture view of technology and innovation, supported by at least 2 local businesses who are actually working in the innovation space.
Carolyn, I'm afraid we're out of time.
Oh, that's it anyway, I've finished. Thank you.
We probably need to create some time when you could come in and talk to our council about all the things you're doing, because I'm sure they'd be interested. But right now, the submissions, we have to keep to a tough timetable. So I'm very sorry about that. And thank you, Alan. I need to acknowledge you for coming in today too, as support. That's all right. I just saw you sitting there very quietly. So thank you very much. I'm afraid we have to move on.
That's all right. Thank you very much. Warwick's here, isn't he? Yeah, yes, Warwick Marshall. Good. Come up, Warwick, and yes, you sit yourself up there, Warwick. We won't press the clock until we say go. We won't press the clock until.
Councillors,
Please concentrate here.
I'll give you the page numbers of the submissions that are being heard this afternoon. So Business Hawke's Bay was page 74. Warwick Marshall is page 68. Murray Deakin, 69. Guardians of the Aquifer is 148. Megan Rose is 74. Fred Robinson is number 51. Patrick Power is page 51. Patrick is page 11. The Hawke's Bay Biodiversity Strategy Group is 113. Steve Thrush is 47. And then Central Hawke's Bay, who can't make it now, was page 119. Rex McIntyre is page 117. Ron Wareham is page 121. Shelley Burnfield is 72. And West Shore Residence is 90.
Bingo, yeah. Okay, Warwick. If we have a lot of submissions, as you can see, so we have 10 minutes for every submission, and if you want councillors to ask questions, you need to do it within that time frame as well.
Yep,
so
no problem.
sorry about the tight schedule, but
I just got a short. I think everybody's got one.
righto, shall I press the button? Are you away?
We're away.
Right.
Time starts now.
Yeah, now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Warwick Marshall. I'm a registered professional surveyor. Been a resident of the Esk Valley for the last 66 years. I'll just take it off my little printout here. I will restrict my comments to the Ahuriri estuary, as I'm not totally familiar with the issues relating to the other identified hotspots. In my opinion, one of the core functions of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council is to maintain wetlands and waterways fit for purpose. The Ahuriri estuary is one of, if not the drainage outlet for stormwater from Bayview, Onehunga Road and Seafield Road areas. When the Ahuriri farm and estuary were under the control of Lands and Survey, those two areas, the farm and the estuary, were managed appropriately, and I emphasise the word managed. The estuary was monitored in a similar way to that of rivers, which included cross-section profiles and maintenance of the channel to ensure drainage that is fit for purpose. That drainage was done on a regular basis by Gordon Day using a dragline and a bucket. Today, a long-reach excavator would do the job. When the lands and surveys ceased to exist in the late 80s, the Ahuriri estuary, being Crown land, was allocated to DOC in accordance with Section 62 of the Conservation Act 87. Once under DOC control, what management of that waterway has occurred? I suggest little, if anything at all. Certainly no cross-section profiles to monitor the build-up of the silt in that area. In my opinion, conservation is all about management fit for purpose. For either DOC and or this council to ignore the drainage function of the estuary for the Bayview area is certain to have serious implications for that area. Seafield Road is often underwater, becoming sometimes impassable due to floodwater not being able to flow down the estuary. There are staff here at this council who have been here long enough to have knowledge of the situation. By your own admission, in one of these little handouts here, due to lack of awareness or concern, we are now faced with a proposal where you want to increase our rates to fix problems that should never have occurred. You propose a number of rate increase options. I ask, what work do you propose doing with those extra funds? Is there a works program? If not, then how do you know what rate increase is required? You suggest a one-off rates increase to accelerate action on our hotspots. Will this one-off rate be separately identified in our annual rate demand so that it can be clearly seen, or will it be hidden in such a way that it becomes a permanent rate required to maintain and deliver our services to the region? A quote from your pamphlet. Clearly, the problems we are confronted with are most likely to have been caused by the lack of maintenance, in particular ongoing maintenance. It is for that reason I have difficulty in accepting this proposal as a one-off rate increase. Maintenance is ongoing and long-term. It is most likely that some of the remedial action required to restore the estuary back to its fit-for-purpose state may be of concern for some other interests. There I'm implying putting machines into a wetland. Perhaps this may be an appropriate time to reconsider the status of the estuary and have it considered as a reserve and appropriately classified in accordance with the Reserves Act 1977. That would then require a formal management plan pursuant to Section 44 of the Reserves Act to be prepared. Such a plan would then ensure that the purpose of the estuary and reflect all interests, and that would include drainage. In my opinion, prior to any variation to our rates, there must be a remedial works program prepared, together with a long-term maintenance program prepared not just for the Ahuriri estuary, but for all hotspots. This will then clearly reveal if this is a one-off rate increase or, most likely, an annual increase. To ensure the ongoing maintenance of the identified hotspots, perhaps a targeted rate for those who benefit from that work should be considered. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
Warwick, the maintenance of the drainage in the past using a drag line, that you say the main channel, so that would be pretty much in the middle of the span of the estuary?
In the span, like the channel went right around the back of Onehunga Road, right up to basically the edge of the tunnel, coming off Hill Road, under that ridge. We only need a channel. it need be no wider than, say, this width here to ensure a drainage. Like the actual wetland there is considerably wide. It has been widened now, with rushes and things like that that have grown up. It is those things, because that channel was not maintained, it has silted up. And every time it silts, so every time there's a flood, there's a bit more silt deposited. It's just getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
The water from that Bayview area in particular now, as a result of the development on Esk Hills in particular, and in parts Esk Ridge, both with Napier City and Hastings District, there's a lot more stormwater coming off that area there now, in particular down onto the Seafield Road, Hill Road area, which used to go out down by the tunnel, down the estuary. The Bayview area relied on pumps to pump it, once it gets out to the drains, they're up over the stop bank into the estuary. Because the estuary now has just silted up, the water is just sort of flowing backwards, and it's just going round and round and round, not going down the thing there. All Bayview area needs is that channel opened up so that the water can drain down there as a stormwater channel as it used to. If not, as I said, I believe one day Bayview will suffer major problems.
So you're
Right.
basically saying that its function as a drain, which it is,
Yeah.
has
Ceased.
been compromised or ceased because that function has been ignored for many years.
That river, if you like to call it, or drain, had the same cross-section profiles on it as the Tukituki, Narora, Tutaikuri, all those other rivers that you monitor on a regular basis with cross-section profiles. You can monitor that with the build-up. You can see what's in there. You can see what work has to be done. Since that work was, the land and surveys ceased, that monitoring also ceased. It'll be an interesting exercise to dig out those profiles and redo them. Could be scary.
We have time for one more question, Mr. Morley.
I just note in your paper you don't mention the treaty group. Are you aware of their involvement?
I am aware that there is a body of people, this council, Napier, Hastings, that treaty group have a program for what, that I'm not too sure. But what I'd like to see is the drainage opened up so that the thing can, everything can live side by side. There's one other comment I raised at this meeting a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago here. I expressed my concern about riparian planting, and I asked the question, what do you envisage riparian plantings are going to look like in 10, 20 years' time? Well, I didn't get a very good answer. The comment that I had, my concern was, the stuff growing now, it's all young, no problems. But everything that is once young gets old. And most things old finish up dying and decaying into the water. Robert Burnside, who was sitting here, said of the 40-odd dams he had on his farm, the most polluted were those that had plantings all around them. There's a message there. The Esk River, right opposite my front gate, once upon a time, the edges were as clean as this tabletop. Now, you cannot even get to the river. It is totally overgrown due to the planting. It is just a festering bed of noxious weeds and everything. You can't get up the bank, you can't cross the bank. It is a disgrace, and I think it's got to be fixed up. And this planting on riverbanks, planting on the edges of waterways, I do not think that is the ultimate answer, ensuring stuff going into it.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time now, but appreciate that. There is a statutory board being formed there, and I think their authority does cover right up there, but perhaps I'll talk to Councillor Curtin about that, because he's going to be involved in that statutory board, more than likely. So hopefully we can help you solve some of these problems. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Murray Deakin. Where's he? Oh, there he is. Oh, he's on the bank. We could have put you up earlier, mate. Thank you, mate. Murray, you sat through, so you know the rules. So you got 10 minutes, and if you want councillors to ask questions, you have to.
Unless they've got a lot of questions, it won't take 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for those that don't know who I am, I'm Murray Deakin. I farm near Tuai with my partner, my wife Audrey Jones there. And we've got the Waikato-Hiki River as one boundary, and the Mungapapa stream on part of the farm too, which adjoins another neighbour. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Shall I start again? Yeah. And I don't actually have a problem with spending my money on trying to improve the environment. So the extra $30 odd that our rates would go up with this 5% for the hotspots is not the issue to me. I don't object to that so much as the fact that we're already spending our own money on doing the sort of things that are going to be done in other areas. So there's a little lack of equity there. Our personal spend on repairing and fencing alone is over $30,000. That's without the cost of the water reticulation to facilitate it. And I know it's only a gesture towards the environment, and it wasn't required by you, and we funded it ourselves. And I also know from studies published on your website, and I put a reference on here as to where the studies are, that it will achieve very little because our waters are so pristine anyway. But we do what we can to improve the environment around our area. I do have a problem with the way this 5% extra rate was pitched as a one-off, when it's clearly an ongoing impost on the ratepayers with no clear end date. And I find this disingenuous style of communicating with the public seems to be ingrained in the culture of your organisation, and quite a number of things that come across from the council seem to be very misleading. My main point that I wanted to put through today was that when council staff are approached about an obvious problem, they seem unable to comprehend the threat to the environment posed by their tick-the-boxes attitude to some very real issues. 41.9% of your council spend already goes on to waterways and environment, yet this area is now in such disarray that you're proposing letting those same people loose with even more money to do what? Watch carefully while the environment degrades further? HBRC need to engage the public in a more open and inclusive manner if they hope to address the hotspots identified and the state of our waterways overall. I've got down here about an example of it, and it's all around the Waikato-Hiki stream, which Audrey already brought up, so I won't labour that point, but I would like to get together with somebody from council and give them all the details of that at some stage, because nobody seems to be listening. We've got all the details from when Genesis first approached us about it, and we can do that at any time, so I'll leave that open. You'll read in my handout, I had a slightly different take on it when I wrote it. A possible solution to your funding needs may be closer than you think. I don't want to enter into the debate on the RWSS, because that, to me, that's a work stream that's taken up large amounts of staff time and therefore money. And either way, that's going to come to an end. It's either going to be done or it's not, and that is going to free up staff time and money. If it goes ahead and ends up costing more, then you'll be coming to us for one more one-off forever. I can only hope that with some new councillors and chairmen that have just been voted in and a new CEO, this secrecy-addicted slug of an organisation can open up and share in the benefits of an inclusive relationship with the public. We all want what's good for the environment, so let us help. If you want any more info, I've put my contact details in here, and any questions.
Okay, so hopefully we're not too much of a slug of an organisation going
it's
forward.
looked that way up until now, Rex.
But questions, councillors?
Oh, I must put in there that I voted for the section 2, the increase of rates, but not the extra rate.
Yeah. Oh, there are no questions, which is quite surprising. And we have given your partner assurance that we want to look at that issue around the power company and their attitude towards the stream and their consent. We just don't have our man is overseas at the moment who could put his finger on that, but and our new chief executive is on holiday, and our current chief executive is on the runway. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and hopefully we can solve some of these problems for you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. We have Pauline. You are. Welcome to the stage, Pauline.
Good to be back. Last week was in Hastings District Council Den,
Yes, it was.
and now I'm in the Lions Den.
Yes.
And
Now,
I know where I prefer to be. Is this switched on?
now, Pauline, no, it's not. You've got to press the little button. But first, I want to welcome you here. It's always good to see your cherry face. And you know the rules. We have 10 minutes because we've got a lot of people to get through. So if you want councillors to question you, you leave a bit of time for them. And the floor is yours. And shall I press the button now?
Start now. You all saw this in the weekend. We're in crisis, okay? And it's not just Hastings District Council. It's the whole of the Heritonga Plains, Napier City Council, Hastings District Council, and Havelock North. All of us face the possibility of having our drinking water chlorinated, thanks to the direction that's been followed since the report out from the water inquiry. This crisis combines three things: paralysis, pseudoscience, and the threat of young water popping up everywhere. We need good governance and good, keen staff to get it fixed. And you've got that here at Hawke's Bay Regional Council. You are the regional authority, and it's your responsibility to look after the aquifer. It's Hastings District's responsibility as a water provider to look after their bores. No one should be fired at Hastings District Council until we know the full story. The report from the panel gives half the story, but at a public meeting in Havelock North last Friday, I heard Labour's spokesman on water endorse the findings of the inquiry, and that is how myths are made. In 1998, it was Bore 2 which was identified as causing that Campylobacter outbreak. But the current hearings prevented Hawke's Bay Regional Council's expert witness from presenting evidence that the same thing probably happened last year. The panel was more interested in the views of the so-called Science Caucus, and Hastings Council's consultant from Tonkin and Taylor was included in the Science Caucus, but there was no independent well driller included in that caucus. No wonder then that such a low rating was given to the Regional Council's evidence that the dry well chambers had flooded during the storm when the power failed. That's what happened in 1998. And that's why the drinking water assessors on behalf of the District Health Board have been hounding Hastings District Council for years to get it sorted out. Get rid of the so-called dry well chambers that sit above the bore head and raise the bore heads above ground level. Now, I sat in on the hearings, so did Lawrence Ewell and their CEO, Mr. McLeod. I read a lot of the evidence. I knew about the water damage in the dry well chamber. I read the report from the 2 investigations carried out by Bayliss Brothers, and I saw the photos and I saw the video. On the very last day of the hearing, Board 2 was still under suspicion, thanks to Nathan Geddy QC, who did an amazing job. So it's a mystery to me while Mr. Ewell and Mr. McLeod have been constantly promoting the idea that they could reuse Board 2. Thanks to our submission, oral submission to the Hastings Council last week, and some subsequent lobbying, some of the councillors there are starting to have second thoughts about Board 2. The CEO realises that if the well driller, Russell Bayliss, expert witness for the Regional Council, had been allowed to speak at the hearing, Justice Stevens would have had a lot of questions about the credibility of the dye testing and the theory that the sheep pond contaminated the aquifer would have got blown out of the water. Some would call it a piece of pseudoscience. I call it a piece of pseudoscience. The panel had heard, if, however, Justice Stevens had heard that the neighbours in Brookvale Road drank the water from their own bores and they did not get sick. Are they having to add chlorine to their water from their own bores right now, while bore 3 up the road is fully treated and chlorinated? As I said in my presentation to the Water Symposium, Hastings District Council cannot prove that bore 2 is safe. In 1998, we found out that in 1998, Hastings District Council signed an agreement with Ngāti Kahungunu iwi that they would move from Brookvale by the 18th of May 2018. That gave them 10 years to find a new source for Havelock North. They actually had a project. It was a $4.9 million project titled New Source for Havelock North and Rising Main from Whakatū, and it's got a number, 202091. The council there approved it in 2009 and included it as part of their long-term plan in 2010, and they budgeted $100,000 to get started. Last Wednesday, after making our submissions, we were rebutted by Mr. McLeod, who disclosed that yes, the project was approved and yes, $100,000 was allocated in 2010, but no, the project did not go ahead, and then a decision had been made to abandon it. We want to know who made that decision. And I've emailed Mr. McLeod, haven't had a reply yet, asking was it the CEO or was it the Mayor and the full council, and on whose advice? We don't want another loss of institutional knowledge, which is what would happen if they fired all the staff. So there's paralysis and pseudoscience and young water. You probably know by now that Hastings is spending $12 million. Their council is going to approve that spend. $7 million of that is for water treatment, and only $5 million is for new sources. Is that for Havelock North? No, it's not. The asset manager told me in Ken Keys on the 19th of May when we had a meeting with them. No, that's not for Havelock North. We were shocked. The thing that really worries Guardians of the Aquifer is that the Regional Council is probably being hamstrung by what's called the Drinking Water Joint Working Group. Who is driving the Joint Working Group? It's not the authority who actually has responsibility for the aquifer, which in the end is what really, really matters. If we get that wrong, then forget the rest. We're just a dust bowl. The Regional Council staff were beaten into submission during the hearing. Their monitoring bore in Brookvale near bore 3 came under suspicion for possibly contaminating bore 3 in October 2015. Did Hastings District Council investigate the cause of that contamination? No. They've just swapped it over to bore 1 and 2 until that got contaminated, and now we've swapped back to bore 3 with full treatment, $800,000 treatment plant. Oh, and also Regional Council didn't get a very good hearing, in my view, because someone made a stupid decision to prosecute and to hold up the hearing. So if Regional Council staff have to wait for direction from the Joint Working Group, there will be no action. Everything will come to a standstill for all of us. I just want to say a well driller did actually investigate bores 1 and 2, but it wasn't Hastings District Council's well driller. It was the Regional Council's expert witness. They brought in Bayliss Brothers to do 2 investigations. What was there a month after the event, they were finally allowed in. And then on the 29th of September, they did a water tightness test on the dry wellheads of the 2 bores. Russell Bayliss turned up 3 days in a row to give evidence. At the end of the 3rd day, he still hadn't given evidence. Justice Stevens said, and these are my notes in shorthand from that day, quote, "Rest assured, we have read your
We have
evidence,
30
Mr.
seconds,
Bayliss,
Pauline.
and we've viewed the photos and the video. Your evidence will speak for itself." In conclusion, someone has to do something. The Regional Council can do something. It's your job to look after the aquifer, test the groundwater, especially Hastings Council's Bore 5 at Lyndhurst, which has shown young water, and test where the surface water is getting into the annulus at the top of that bore head, and test the well casing to see whether it's rusted out and whether surface water is leaching out from the annulus and down into the groundwater. Everyone would thank you if you just got on with the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline.
Whew.
Once again, you've left us no doubt of what
I
you
know.
will think, and we really appreciate your frankness. And
I've
of a
handed
shame.
out
That-
10 pages of bedtime reading for
Yeah.
you because I knew I'd run out of time. But
Thank
it was
you.
important that,
Thank you very
that
much.
people here today could hear that.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, Megan, where are you? Oh, yeah, there.
Watch out.
So, welcome, Megan, once
Thank
again.
you.
And you know how it works. We have 10 minutes because we have so many people. And if you want councillors to ask questions, you need to. So tell me when you want me to press the
That's
button.
great. Yeah, no, you can start. Thank
Okay.
you. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all again. Feeling a little bit more relaxed about the conversation this time round without too many fingers hovering over the buzzers, hopefully. So I have said no to more money because I don't believe the issues that we face are because we don't have enough money. I think the issues that this organisation and this region faces are because we don't have enough focus. And at some stage over the last 10 years or so, less 8, this organisation changed where we could rely on that focus being. When I started working within these walls, there was a tagline that this organisation used, and it was safeguarding our environment. And a tagline is a fantastic thing because it sits on the piece of paper and it serves as a bit of a reminder when you're drafting what your priorities are and where you're going to put your time and your energy. And that gave all of us a sense of peace and assuredness that we had one organisation in this region that we could rely on, with its core function being out there and really clear that you were here to safeguard our environment. Around that time, and I won't go into too much detail, but those of you who were around at that time may remember conversations about being passive as a tagline and some of the alternatives that were talked about. There was a change with a statement that included the term lazy balance sheet. And when it started, we all sort of laughed it off, and it grew and it grew and it grew until one day safeguarding our environment fell off. Our signage and our letterhead and the front pages of our reports, and we seem to forget the core business that all of the ratepayers and the residents of this gorgeous region could rely on as they got on with their business, their jobs, their families, their focus. We pay you to do one job. One. To safeguard our environment. Now, I have had moments of forgetfulness, so forgive me if I forgot the conversation that happened around dropping that tagline, about changing that focus, about moving away from that core area. If I missed the debates and the discussions about where we should be putting our time and energy and whether we were hiring the right people to drive economic development, or whether we had a building full of brilliant scientists and people that understood how things grew and what made them die. Because on my watch, we have a building full of brilliant scientists, which may explain why we've outsourced so much of the knowledge over the last 6 to 9 years that's flowed through this organisation. So I have two things, because unlike, or possibly like most of the people here, I hate having the same conversation over and over and over, and I feel like I've been having this one now for years. And so rather than having this chat and this really nice engagement and then walking away and knowing that nothing's going to come of it, I would like you to put it back. I'd like you to put the tagline back. I'd like to look at a piece of paper that says what this organisation is here for and see Hawke's Bay Regional Council safeguarding our environment. Not driving the economy, because there are people that study long and hard to develop the expertise in that, and you guys are all fabulous, but you have not done that. That does not fill us with confidence. This is not your legacy. Your legacy is to safeguard our environment. So meet us halfway. Show us that there is a point to these conversations and put it back. Now you can decide to do that now, or we can move on to my next conversation, my next suggestion, which is a little bit trickier. I'm a disruptive thinker, those of you who were lucky enough to work with me know. And so I don't have a lot of time for the status quo. I don't believe it exists. I don't think this conversation's working, and I'd like to change it. I'd like it to be community-led, and I'd like to not come into one of these submissions and hear people saying, I've talked to your staff, I've talked to your team, I've talked to your councillors, and it's gone nowhere. Because with all due respect, we have jobs. It's on our to-do list until it's done, and we're watching rivers run dry, we're watching riparian grow out of control. So we're changing the conversation. It's a party, you're invited. We're not going to get here by divisiveness. We've got communities to rebuild, the one of which the most important, Debbie and I share, my hometown, Waipawa. So this is not divisive. It is disruptive, but it's not divisive. We have a region to rebuild. We all need to know what our core functions are. I'd like to suggest that yours is safeguarding our environment, and I would love to see a table full of people nodding and saying, yeah, let's put that back, and let's be really sure every time we pick up a piece of paper, every time we drive past a regional council sign, why we're here and how we can relax and get on with our jobs, knowing that the most important one is being done. Thank you. Any questions on how?
Thank you, Megan. You didn't leave us any doubt of your views either, which is... questions, councillors? Comments, councillors?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Megan. Totally endorse your comments around putting the some sort of tagline back. I wasn't conscious, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. And it is a really important thing to be able to get that messaging out as to where we actually stand on things. I know we're going through the process of looking at our strategic plan and such like, and the words that go into that, and that is certainly part of where we're heading on that in that sort of direction.
Great.
But
Will
in
the
terms-
public inform that? Is that the intention that the public will
I understand
inform?
that is the intention here, that the public will get some say in that. But yeah, the actual the mechanics of getting it out, the message out there is, yeah, quite important as well. That's an important part of it.
Any objections to putting safeguarding our environment back on the letterhead?
I didn't realise it had been dropped off or was there in the first place, so yeah, sounds quite...
It's just that I can't recall the actual wording that we were thinking of, but it was certainly something along those very similar to that sort of thinking.
We will consider it.
We will look forward to seeing it.
Any more thank you, Megan. Really appreciate that. Okay, we have Fred. There he is. Welcome, Fred.
Just unpacking.
That's all right. Take your time. So, welcome, Fred. And you know we have 10 minutes, and if you want councillors to ask questions, you've heard me say it before. We've got to keep quite strictly to our timetable because we've got lots of people. So you tell me when you want me to press the button.
Go now.
Go now.
Go now. Great. Thank you for the opportunity, Chairman Graham and councillors, for the opportunity of addressing you. You've asked for help to fix the rivers, lakes and streams. Well, good. I support the one-off 9.88% rates increase. That said, let's take a moment and ask the question, what's the real problem here? What's the underlying problem, the root cause? Why is the water degradation happening? Because right now, without the right question, you'll never get the right answer. The way the current economic system operates with a scarce national currency means the environment will always get trashed. The only solution to this is to create a complementary local currency with which to restore and enhance the environment. We all live deeply enmeshed in a planetary money machine, most of the cogs of which we're unable to perceive, let alone understand or manage. Economics textbooks talk about what money does, but not with what money is. Money is not a thing, but an agreement, usually an unconscious one. The root problem, the cause of our environmental degradation, is in fact a structural flaw in the current money system and to the traditional supply. It's not a lack of water, it's a lack of money. Clearly the council at some level recognises this, otherwise you'd not be asking for another $1 million to begin addressing 6 environmental hotspots. We appear to be on the same page. So does money have to remain scarce? Why not create our own money in sufficiency to complement the scarce national currency and enable more work to be paid for? You know? A globally recognised authority on money is Bernard Laitier. His book, The Future of Money, which is this one, has such clarity of the problem and detail of the solution that even a blind man would see it. Okay? Now, if any of you would read only to page 55 in this book, you would be money literate and better informed than 95% of the population. You would also have a clear understanding of why we have these environmental problems and how to solve them without rate increases, without borrowing, and without selling the family silver. Solve them through a regional currency. In short, Leiter's book is a how-to manual of how to fix our environmental problems and why these problems were inevitable. So my request of this council, or requests of this council, are that the regional councillors read this book, The Future of Money, at least to page 55, and that we include in the 2017 annual plan that the council will examine the feasibility of establishing a regional currency that would be redeemable for payment of HBRC rates. To facilitate my first request being met, I have purchased 5 copies of this book with intention of loaning to the regional councillors. I realise everyone around this table has got more reading than you can possibly cope with. But, Chairman Graham, are you willing to read to page 55 in this book? You are? Well, there's your copy. Could you please hand it round? Now, I have 4 other copies. Yes, no, that's good. Right, you want to know what the real cause is and the real solution? It's in here. Who else would like to read this book? Paul Bailey, can you please pass it on to Paul Bailey? Thank you. Anyone else?
He's a banker.
He is a former bank manager, not a banker. Okay, and the last one is for down there. I'll get to you in a second. Yes, a Labor man. Yep. Okay. So thank you so much. I also want to address your staff's comments, which are in the material you have in front of you. They're right onto it. They know exactly what's going on, and their comments are extremely erudite, or whatever the word is.
Erudite.
Yeah, erudite. That's it. Not erudite, the glue. Yeah. Love it. So, yes, it would be good to wait for the Christchurch people to get their act together, because they are looking at the same concept. But they've got a lot on their plate, as we all know. They've had a lot on their plate for the last 6 years. There is a statement in your staff's comments which says there is also a large quantum of work involved behind a feasibility study, let alone implementation of a local currency. Now, while this could be true, and I say could be true because you can throw as much money at something as you want, I draw your attention to a situation in southern Germany. In 2003, a high school teacher in Bavaria, Germany, wanted to teach a group of students about the economy by creating their own regional money to be used in local shops and businesses, and they called it the Chiemauge. That's my pronunciation. I'm probably murdering the German. Sorry about that. The students were in charge of designing the currency vouchers as well as managing its accounts and administering the scheme. It started out slowly in 2003, but by 2011, it had reached an annual turnover of 5.1 million euros. To date, 600 companies and 300 stores use the Chiemauge. Like the Vogel currency, it automatically loses value if you don't spend it. So if high school students, 6 young women in fact, can successfully develop a regional currency in Germany, I feel that we in Hawke's Bay can do even better. Additionally, this council could establish a non-profit body, such as a charitable trust, to conduct the feasibility study, the trust obtaining funding for the study, say from lotteries grants, and even developing the regional currency if considered desirable by HBRC. Anyway, so that's my spiel. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Yes, from our ex-bank manager.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Fred. Just reading through your material, what it reminds me of is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what the first Labor government did to finance the building of state housing stock that they got together, in terms of they were under those same constraints about at all costs, where's the money going to come from, and they just said build it.
To an extent, you're completely correct. They created the money through the Reserve Bank, so this money would be created by the council by spending it into existence. So you'd pay people to clear a stream or do pest control or do whatever you needed to be done, and those people doing the work would agree to a percentage of local currency and national currency. You perhaps say 80% local currency, 20% national currency, and that money would eventually wind up back here at the council as payment for rates where it's effectively cancelled. So it is different. The Reserve Bank isn't creating this money. You guys are. Councillor.
Thank you for your presentation and your interesting idea. I'm not sure if everybody in the public understand it exactly, so I just want to read one paragraph of your submission here.
Yep.
HBRC would issue rates vouchers to pay for work done for it, e.g. planting, stream cleaning, pest control, maintenance, etc., and would accept these vouchers as payment for rates from any HBRC ratepayer. Thus, the rates voucher would become a local currency and greatly diminish debt. So there's an awful lot of voluntary work happens here for the environment. There's an awful lot of environmental organisations that work freely to improve things.
Yes.
Would this concept not have them seeking to be paid?
That's a question I don't have an answer to because I'm not those people. But what I do know is that there are a lot of people passionate about the environment that have committed a hell of a lot of time and energy to improving it. I think they're going to still want to do that. What this does is enable this council to extend what you can do now, because some people literally can't do it voluntarily. They've got to put food on the table, and if you were to read to page 55 in this book, you would discover that in fact it improves the economy of the local area. So I believe it will be a winning formula, but as to answer your question exactly, because I'm not those people doing voluntary work, I don't know if they're now going to say, "Oi, I want to be paid."
Alan,
No, Fred, fascinating contribution. Thank you, as usual. Just a comment, the council actually runs a small reference lending library, and it could be that the council could buy a couple of copies off you and put it in its library.
If the council's that keen, I'm happy to donate a couple of copies to the council.
Well,
good idea.
On that note, Fred, we are out of time. Thank you very much. It was a really interesting conversation, and I note your names in the book, and I will duly return it as other councillors will. Or I might put it in our library.
You forgot to ask what the basic unit of currency this would be proposed. Is it there's a bit of proposing that it be a Rex. And a five Rex note would be a mohi.
Now we have Patrick. I don't see Patrick here. Patrick Powers here. So we will move on to Hawke's Bay Biodiversity. Charles. Welcome, Charles.
You do?
Slideshow, okay.
You see that you can see this one there as well. See that you turn and one click just moves it forward. One left.
Yeah. There's some talented people in our region.
Thank you very much.
No, it's not stupid. No. We need to talk to you about it. Thank you, Charles. You know, we have 10 minutes,
Right.
and if you want any questions, you need to get them within that 10 minutes. So tell me when to press the button, and you're away. Go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors, kia ora koutou, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the work of the implementation group for the Hawke's Bay Biodiversity Strategy. I might remind you this is a representative group of all of the organizations that contributed to the writing, plus a substantial number of people who are in a volunteer capacity there. I'd like just very quickly to remind you of the problem. A millennium ago, this whole area, all of Hawke's Bay, was covered with about 20 ecological communities, including mainly lowland forests that you see in the deep blue and green there, and light green there. A millennium on, the white represents those areas that have been modified by human activity. It's about 70% that's been highly modified by human activity. That's a good thing, by the way. I'm not here to tell you otherwise. It's the source. It's primarily agriculture. It's the source of wealth for this region. It's been good for the people here, but things like that don't come at a cost, without a cost. And the primary cost is in terms of what are described as ecosystem services. These are services and goods that nature provides to humans basically for free, and which we could not live without. And this is categories of the various types of services. They include provisioning of all the materials we need to live: food, fresh water, clean air, building materials, and so on. They regulate the supply of those. They clean the air, they clean the water, they control the floods, and so on. The supporting part of ecosystem services is effectively nature's infrastructure, soils and so on that underpin agriculture and so on. And lastly, cultural services. All human societies are deeply embedded in and connected to nature. They value them, they get spiritual value out of them. More recently, they're really the foundation of the tourism industry nationwide, and people value those connections. They go to see them, and as an example of what happens if we don't have those, well, the water crisis demonstrated that tourism fell off as soon as that became national news. So these are things that deeply matter to humans. Another tangible example are those species that are extinct from this region, as are many, and these are 4 that are still present elsewhere in New Zealand that could be returned here. In the case, for example, of kakapoa and kiwi and tuatara also, Zealandia in Wellington gets 140,000 people a year, and some pay quite a lot extra to see the kiwi and kakapoa at night, and it's a source of real economic benefit to that area. There is good news nationally, but particularly here. There are some hundreds of environmental projects in this region that do all sorts of useful work, often in isolation from one another. We have a particularly effective predator control program here, especially for possums. Species like the rifleman are being reintroduced to restored areas, and planting programs are going on almost every weekend. So people want to restore nature in a way that underpins those ecosystem services and makes for a healthier environment. Now, the plan that the planning group has come up with is a think big project in a sense, in quite a different sense than the 1970s. We wanted to be audacious, so there's no point in acting otherwise. And I'd point you to examples nationally of other projects that share a number of features. First of all, they're all landscape in their scale. They're really big. They're not thinking about a single stream in somebody's farm or something. They're thinking of the whole region. They arise from community-based initiatives. These are not government initiatives. They all have substantial philanthropic funding from a range of sources, and I'll mention those in just a minute. And once those elements are there, then governments at both regional, local, and national capacity engage with those. And some of these here are, for example, funded by the Next Foundation. You heard from Jan Honey a couple of weeks ago. The Next Foundation has contributed about $130 million over 10 years towards predator-free Wellington, Project Janzoon, Taranaki Mauna. Reconnecting Northland is a project supported by the Tyndall Foundation. The Cape to City project here has philanthropic support underpinning it, and Gareth Morgan is helping fund the $1 Million Mouse. It's Gareth's $1 million matching money. So we're thinking big, we want to be ambitious, and the plan we put forward, we hope, is that, and also reflects accurately what's in the strategy that was agreed about 1.5 years ago. So the next 3 to 4 years really are the foundations for a future of about 30 years of work to achieve the goals of the strategy. We're basically proposing to put in place those structures and enabling mechanisms that allow these to be achieved. And I might also point out that it was written with a whole range of other plans in mind. The New Zealand Biodiversity Action Plan, for example, Predator-Free New Zealand, all of those mesh in with what we're proposing. There are 6 priority actions. 2 of those, the first 2 are the ones I would focus on because they're absolutely critical. Nothing will happen without these. The Biodiversity Forum is a mechanism for creating a conservation community, connecting the entire region through the ecological restoration work. The foundation is a enabling mechanism. It's there to create the funds, the additional funds beyond those already spent by councils and government to make this work happen. It simply will not happen without those. The others are all foundation works in a sense that they have to be done initially to allow the really ambitious work to get going, identifying further targets, precise targets, and so on, and they aim to engage the entire community. So those two, the foundation and the forum, are the ones that I would particularly point to, and they will see the project through for the entire life of it. They effectively become the owners of this community-based project. Now, if, assuming these go ahead, there is a pathway that should be in place 5 years from now, and you'll see some things happen very quickly. By the end of this year, the forum should be established, have an inaugural event that draws public attention and begins the work. The biodiversity projects on a small scale can start immediately thereafter, on a larger scale by year 4, and with real work, a foundation, a community-based foundation by year 5. And we're asking your support to make those things happen. Now, I might point out that this council's been very supportive already. We could not have got this far were it not for the time that you've donated through your staff to make this happen. We've had really effective support from Desiree Cull, Keiko Hashaba, and Rena Douglas. They have all worked really hard, and without them and their leadership, we wouldn't have got this far. But I would point out that effectively that's volunteer time. They have not had those jobs were tacked on to their existing jobs. So they didn't lose any responsibilities. They gained one for the past year and have been really wonderful for us. So in the next year, in the year beginning July 1st, we are seeking $150,000 as a dedicated resource so that we can actually employ somebody full-time to begin the work of getting these projects done. It'll be a brand new activity. It'll be establishment of a program, and that is a big job for anybody. We will also be asking for substantial funding, $200,000 a year, to contribute to the endowment that we plan to raise for this foundation, that after a period of about 5 years will be on the order of $3 million, maybe more. Part of what the Biodiversity Forum will be doing, by the way, will be working with the foundation to have fundraising projects. The last question, this is ambitious. We hope you find it that way. The question is, why now? Is it too ambitious? And we think not. In fact, we think the time is exactly right for a couple of reasons. First of all, there is a fair bit of momentum going. In the talks over the last year, we've consulted widely. Groups have come together. I think a lot of trust across this community has been created, and people have given quite generously to it. We've tried to align it with existing work. I might, for example, point out that among the work that's underway right now is Predator Free 2050. They're now seeking possibly to remove all possums from the country in the next 10 years. This region has a wonderful record of possum control, and they're a likely target for funding to initiate a lot of the work in 2050. Also, foundations like the Next Foundation are quite aware of what's going on here and are quite interested in seeing if they can contribute as well. So I think now is the time. The national government has stepped up in a number of ways: water, threatened species, predator-free, to show their commitment to it. I think the public of New Zealand want this, and that's obvious in a number of ways. So it's a great time to do this, and I hope that you'll find this request timely. Out of time, happy to answer any questions.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
In 2 seconds.
Not even 2 seconds, but thank you very much.
Can I just ask him to clarify the 200 over 4 years? Was that 50K per annum or 200 each?
That's 200 annually, and I didn't say we're making similar requests out of it for every other council. Thank you.
Before you go, I just want to publicly acknowledge the incredible work you do in this space for us here. You're a gem for our community. Thanks.
Very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, Steve. Welcome to the... Okay, up you get, mate.
Yep, just hand it to
You should have more from the other guy, you know. Yeah. Welcome, Steve. Just get your papers in order, and then I'll press the button when you say go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're right.
My submission is very simple, and I don't think there'll be I don't expect any questions at the end of it. I'm a resident of Hastings, And as I've said there, I have the privilege of living next to the Peka Peka swamp. I've seen what improvements can be made when the regional council and their various support teams get involved in having to go up these wetlands, and made a huge difference. I'm lucky enough that I can drive up my driveway and stop, and between here and say that the wall away, I can see bitters and the rushes there. So that's been such a huge improvement. So it goes without saying, I would think that water is probably our most important element on the planet. Virtually nothing on the planet will live without it, and we can't exist without it, obviously. And for whatever reasons, the water quality has degraded over the last few generations, and so it's up to us to improve it and to safeguard it for the future, so that things just get better. So I think the environmental kickstart you've suggested here is a good idea, and I'm just asking that you use it wisely. Please don't reinvent the wheel. This has been done before in other places. For example, Manawatu River Accord. You look at Taupo and Rotorua and Waikato, they've all done things like this, so we don't necessarily have to do it from scratch. We can learn what they've done and build on that. This is a little bit of a hobby horse of mine, and I think you've heard it a bit from some other presenters. Please don't waste the fund and future funding on talk fests and overly detailed planning. Do practical things that actually achieve physical results. I mean, a lot of people in Hawke's Bay talk to me and say, we just want the regional council to do things. We want to see results out there. So I would encourage you, let's get on and do some things. Your officer's report talks about it, but yes, use the funding to leverage more resources as much as possible. And I'd suggest we need to you need to put pressure on central government. I'd suggest the next lot of politicians who are elected in Hawke's Bay, whatever persuasion they're from, you send them down to Wellington and say, don't come back until you've brought a whole lot of funding for Hawke's Bay back with you. Get them to do some work for the region. So the bottom line is, I support your proposal to have a environmental kickstart fund rate, and I just encourage you, let's get on and do it. So any questions?
Thank you, Steve. I'm sure these two gentlemen who are having a little chat over here have got a question. For Steve, have you?
I was just checking with the chair of the Environment Committee to see that he'd got the message from Steve about just do it. I've said to him, next committee meeting, let's not have any oral reports. We just want leadership from the top. Just do it, Tom.
You've got to admit, Steve, that was a great recovery, wasn't it? Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just reiterate Councillor Barker's message there is that I, for one, am tired of just talking. I want to see something going on too, so that's a priority for me.
Yep.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, thank you very much, Steve.
You don't want me to talk for the Mayor next?
For the Mayor?
Yeah.
Don't think so. We have a little bit of time. Sarah, you missed our morning meeting, which should chastise you for that, but I'm going to take Chairman's discretion and bring you on now. Thank you. Come up here, Sarah. Come up here. Come on. Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. No, you know the rules. You've done this before, so 10 minutes.
Right.
And
speed read, I hope.
Don't speed. Don't go. Don't rush.
I congratulate and support the council with your initiative to develop business plans to address some of the region's most sensitive receiving fresh and coastal water environments. These hotspots provide important intrinsic natural values as well as economic, cultural, scenic and social and recreational values. Recognising and protecting the natural processes and systems that support these vulnerable receiving systems is fundamental. We need clean, fresh water from the rivers, streams and springs, the aquifers, to feed all these ecosystems. To improve these ecosystems, we need to address catchment management, land use regimes, and practices of all industry sectors in Hawke's Bay. So that's the agricultural, forestry, industry, roading, urban development, etc. So a significant reduction in the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, contaminants, heavy metals and microbes, threatening microbes, derived, used and disposed of in water in our environment is required. We need to understand what is required and protect healthy microbe ecology to support healthy, balanced ecosystems. We need to manage our ecosystem carrying capacity and sustainability of our biological and physical resources to protect our water. We need to understand the consequences of hydrological modification, the extent we have drained our wetlands, destroying the intrinsic value of water retention and purification and biodiversity, and the local industries for which they supported. Well over 90% of our wetlands is lost in this region. The effects of in-river dams, diversions, weirs, piping, bores, etc. on catchment and aquifer ecosystems. The hotspot business plans need to address those catchment issues that are in the very hard basket. The degradation of aquifers. We cannot put our head in the sand. I'll miss out a bit here. I'll try to shoot through. From the 2017 GNS Aquifer work that's been done recently, was at the symposium, I consider that aquifer that which the Oahu bore is drawn from is also a hotspot. Effect of monoculture, forestry, land scale clear filling over the whole subcatchments significantly increases the risk of excessive sedimentation and debris flows. There are alternatives. Discharge of industrial pollution. Just how effective is the administration of pollution prevention plans? I've been working on one for 3 years and I'm not that impressed. Roading, urban, residential stormwater. The movement for low impact design needs to be reinvigorated and at the forefront. We need to question fertiliser for choice, industry and application practices. Should farm management plans be produced by fertiliser companies? Do we need to question agricultural practices? Indeed, are blooms of cyanobacteria thriving in glyphosate that has had a significant increase in agricultural use? Should limits of use be applied? I believe that, so I'm going on to part 2 now, and I believe that the RWSS will only compound environmental issues in the receiving environments of Lake Whātuma, Tukituki River, estuary and coast. Lakes are generally more vulnerable than rivers because they act like sinks, accumulating pollutants, especially sediment, and the phosphorus trapped within it. Management of lakes is complex and difficult to manage, as the Council has already experienced and as I have myself. Lakes including this reservoir, RWSS reservoir, has the potential to release nitrates, toxic and noxic water and microbes downstream. Now, NIWA in May 2013 and Limino Track 2011 produced a report for the resource consent application. And I suggest reading reading pages 74 to 83 and page 130. NIWA recognised the main tool for the reservoir water quality would be the dam intake operating regime. Through their comprehensive modelling, they determined a preferred intake level. HBRC proposed a very different dam intake operating regime from what was recommended by NIWA. HBRC, in their business planning, made the decision not to include NIWA's recommended 25 plantation forestry buffer to protect the reservoir from adverse pulses of phosphorus. Limo Track states comprehensive monitoring of river quality downstream of the dam is essential. HBRC proposed no such monitoring. NIWA Lemaitre stated remodelling should be carried out if there's any deviation from the flow regime. To date, we don't really seem to know the potential outcomes downstream for the environment or for drinking water. So that remodelling hasn't been done. I consider to rely on the RWSS and its flushing flow regimes to improve the vulnerable hotspot downstream receiving ecosystems as foolhardy. If the RWS flushing flows do manage to reach the 115 k's to the coast, they will be only removing effects of pollution from one sensitive receiving environment to another. Flushing flows will only worsen the competition for water between irrigators and the environment. The RWSS resource condition, water released during flushing flows shall not be taken for irrigation or water supply during supply purposes downstream. So during the flushing flow, you cannot take water from the Waipawa River. So you cannot take RWSS water. In a pressurised distribution network, flows to irrigators will reduce during the 9 to 12 hour duration of flushing flow. The more frequent and the greater the volume of flushing flows, the greater the reduction of irrigation flows. During prolonged dry periods and drought, the RWSS will be required to weigh up between the irrigation-dependent producers and flushing away the nuisance periphyton when it's at its very peak. It's not going to be an easy task. I have opposed the design of the RWSS distribution with mixing of waters, using Makaruru reservoir water across other subcatchment streams, rivers and lakes. Now the upper Taukitoki River, Lake Whatuma and the Mangatatawa stream are also included in this scheme design. I consider the mixing of waters to be environmentally risky. There is a risk of cross-contamination and the unknown but unique characteristics that support biodiversity could be lost. I don't support any more money spent on the RWSS. However, if it's still pursued by HBRC, I request staff time is allocated to the annual plan to ensure that the RWSS feasibility, not in the detailed design stage, that river water quality parameters are updated and remodelled, and that staff ensure scheme design has and will not be compromised in regard to reservoir water quality and potential effects downstream, potentially their catchment. I conclude, I see the Council's hotspot business plan to be holistic and able to address catchment, land use and resource issues and support all sectors: agriculture, horticulture, forestry, fishing, fishery, tourism, industry and urban development. I support the Hotspot Initiative business planning to be undertaken now and the rates increased to do so as the need is critical and urgent. I support the I support holistic hotspot catchment planning that addresses issues from all sectors and communities throughout the region in an equitable way, in investing in improving environments and creating job opportunities and leadership in our clean green brand and industries. I see your hotspot business plan as a brave step in facing up to where we have been and where we are, what we are doing, and the directions we could and should be going. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate those final comments. Unfortunately, we don't have any room for questions from councillors. You took your entire 10 minutes exactly.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Now we have Gordon Rex McIntyre. To the stage, mate. Now, you have done this a few times, Rex, so 10 minutes, he invented it. And you're promising not to give us a hard time today before I press the button, aren't you?
I'll try not to, Mr. Chairman, TR.
Well, you tell me when to go.
I'm ready.
Ready, right.
Thank you anyway for the opportunity to speak to my submission. I am very disappointed that the staff did not analyse on the regional land care scheme of how much the council has invested, how much the farmers have put into it, and what the total amount is in dollar terms, and what the long-term environmental impact has been and the results. My point is that if it is working really well and you haven't monitored or you haven't considered it, if you have monitored, you didn't answer me. The landowners will get more done if they do it voluntary when they can afford to, and that's key. But please don't have the arrogance to think that you know best and to tax your way through it, because at times farming does not pay. Landowners have a limited budget to spend on the various needs of the farm, with wildly fluctuating incomes and financial climates to deal with. Fickle climates to deal with. Don't think you have a priority call. What I'm saying is, don't increase the rate for environmental work. Just encourage it to happen when they can afford it. A note in your handout, the council has very few specifics in how they're going to spend the extra money they want, i.e. Lake Tutira. That is not good enough. If you want more money, tell us what you're going to do. And come to a conclusion. I included in my submission a thought I've had for part of the solution for the improvement of the water quality in Tutira. It was not included in the summary. I started the first initiative of Tutira in 1980, nearly 40 years ago, and have been keenly interested in and involved in it. And like you, I feel very, very disappointed at the lack of real progress. Strongly, I'd say don't create another rate. Most landowners are contributing to the environmental enhancement now. Encourage them to go further when and if they can. Questions, please.
We'll take, with that sort of provocative report, we might take questions and comments from our councillors. Starting with Councillor Barker, I'm sure he's good for some.
Given that you said that you became aware of the issue in Lake Tutira 40 years ago, and you've had some association with Regional Council, I wonder what you would say is the reason for us getting to the state we are now, where it's worse than what it was 40 years ago.
I dispute the fact that it's worse than it was 40 years ago. It was bloody terrible then, you could see it, even more so than you can see now. And 40 years ago, we didn't anticipate that. We thought that when we changed the river, the creek, out of Sandy Creek, diverted it and bypassed the lake, that would take most of the pollution away. And 40 years ago, they used to have about 6 mobs of 500 cattle stop over in the Sandy Creek holding pens, and that was a large contributor to the pollution of the lake, that volume of cattle every winter. And the thought then, and we got $250,000, and the staff member and myself who went to Wellington and got $250,000 40 years ago, thought that bypassing Sandy Creek would let the whole thing clear up a lot quicker. Then in '95, I was the one who negotiated the deal with the Guthrie Smith Trust to buy the land on the northwestern side of Lake Tutira and retire that from the heavy farming exercise that was going through at the time. Plenty of fertiliser, Muldoon handed out like that, and they poured it on. And so we thought that that would help turn around by not putting fertiliser on. But all those things didn't alter the fact that the deep water in Tutera, 400 feet or metres, I've forgotten which, it didn't stir around. And that's why I go to the point that it's got to be changed. The land is still leaking nutrients that was closed up years ago into the lake, and it's still supplying, making the lake nutrient rich. And to overcome that, in my opinion, you've got to put clean water into at least halfway down the lake so it can circulate and then go back out. And to do that, I believe that there's an opportunity. Sandy Creek is not a very steep catchment in the creek itself where the highway goes. You could dam it in 2 or 3 places and step it down and put it through filtration planting. Getting down near the bottom, it's an easy place to dam it. You get a bit of altitude above the lake, turn around and put a contour drain around the north side of the lake and put it in about halfway down the lake into the lake, so it actually gets down into the lake and fresh water gets in there and goes out. So that's my suggestion that I would like to have seen included, but it's a possibility. And that's why I say I'm sorry that the proposal to increase the rate has not had any detail in how you're going to do it. Any other questions?
Well, I just thought you gave us some detail there, but I come back to the key point. The things that you've said which changed the environment, as you would say, for the better, all have required money and investment, each one of them. So how would you propose for us to improve the quality of Lake Tutera without similarly putting a money and investment into it?
You haven't told me how you're going to do it. You're asking for the money and you haven't told me, and I don't want to invest money in a system that I think won't go.
But you said it requires money.
Yes, I do.
Okay, that's good. We agree on that. I think the point's been covered. I mean, you know, you're saying that lake hasn't got much better for 40 years. That's under a voluntary regime. So how can we possibly sit here and argue that a voluntary regime is going to improve things? I don't think it will.
Perhaps we've learnt in the past of what we've done hasn't been good enough. We thought it was, but it hasn't been good enough. How are you going to force someone, especially up Sandy Creek, not to farm? Are you going to retire their farms? What are you going to do? I don't know. Are you going to buy their farms?
Well, that's the world we're heading into, Rex, with environmental management plans that farmers are going to have to do, and that's happening right throughout the country. I mean, how else are you going to improve things? I mean, it's fine. Every person that's ever come to us and talked about farmers, because they're the main managers of land in this country, every one of them has said to us, you've got a whole bunch of really top-class farmers, and then you've got some ones who don't manage their land. How on earth do you manage the ones that won't manage their land in a way that's environmentally responsible without regulation? You tell me how we can do it.
Well, there's a number of things that apply there. One is some of them don't want to or see no need to, and I've believed for a long time that's a generational change. So when the change comes in the generation, you've probably got the new farmers that come on board who are much more interested in improving the environment. I believe there's not many farmers around that I know who don't want to leave their farms and the environment a better place than they found it.
That's my point. How could you possibly argue that right now that the environment has not been degraded? It clearly has been. Every environmental monitor that we receive tells us that.
Paul, do you have a question?
No, I think that's covered my points well.
With some frustration.
Can I just ask then, in response, how are you going to force a farmer by regulations if he is paying a big debt and can't afford to do what you require him to do?
Paul.
It's
It's not a hypothetical question. I know the facts, that is, some farmers don't do anything.
Have you have a question, Paul, or do
I was just going to suggest that every day there are businesses that go out of business through bankruptcy or receivership or whatever it was because they cannot afford to do business in the manner that they've been doing it. And that not only stands for farming, that also stands for retailers down Emerson Street and any other numerous other types of free enterprise. So if a farmer is unable to farm within environmental limits, then that causes them to go out of the farming business and is replaced by someone who can farm within environmental limits on that particular property. That's the way it happens.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Rex. So you got the vibrant discussion that you expected, and the first time today that we've had such vibrant discussion. I'd just like to say to acknowledge, your experience and your knowledge. That I was really enthralled by that. Really, that some of the things you were saying about Tutera in the past, I didn't know that history. And if you want it about our business plan, well, we need to talk to people like you who have that history and that knowledge. So we are creating a plan. That's what the money is for, and we need to talk to people like you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to be
We'll
part
give
of
you a
that.
ring. Thanks, Rex. Mr. Ron Wareham? There he is. Welcome, Ron. So welcome, Ron. You know the rules. If, you have 10 minutes. That includes questions from councillors, and we're trying to stick to our timetable, and we are managing that at the moment. So you tell me when you want to start, and I'll hit the button.
All right, I think I'm pretty set.
Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to my submission. Firstly, my apologies if due to my lack of knowledge of the overlap of the lines of responsibility, my remarks should perhaps possibly be directed at the Napier City Council and not the Regional Council, but I believe the concerns regarding water quality, etc., are universal to all the other areas. I just refer to my first paragraph in the submission regarding an area in Milford where I grew up, because it is very similar to what's happened here. We had an area, I don't know if any of you know it, the Wairau Valley on the North Shore in Auckland, which was a swamp area. When I was young, I used to catch frogs there as a kid, and the water from there was filtered through the swamp and through a creek into the Wairau estuary. The swampland was reclaimed and drained, turned into an industrial, commercial and residential area, and as a result of that is where the pollution started. I had a factory on the edge of one of those drains, and you would not believe what came down in the heavy rain. There was 44-gallon drums, dunnage, plastic of all types, containers, sheet plastic, and it all used to end up in the estuary until they eventually put a gate across one part of it where there was a slight drop, like a slight waterfall. But the amount of rubbish that was coming down there at one stage just forced the whole fence just right over, collapsed it. There was a launch, and this is what first kind of got me interested in what was happening. That this launch had been moored down in the estuary for some years, and I and a group of people knew and used to work with some of the boat builders there, and they suggested that the boat be pulled out. It was pulled out of the area, and there was a great, about 6 inches of oysters growing on the bottom of it, which we all thought was great because we were going to have a feed. A guy got a spade and started to scrape them off, and at that stage he vomited. the smell coming from those oysters was worse than any sewage I've ever smelt. They were filter feeders, of course, and they were still alive, but the pollution within them was just incredible. So we certainly didn't get a feed out of it, I can tell you that. On several occasions I observed coming down the creek a coloured, perhaps oxides or acrylic paint, whatever it was, I don't know, but it was traced back by council about 4 kilometres along one of the drains to a residential area of several thousand houses. They couldn't go any further than that and never were on any of the occasions that I mentioned it to them. So it just shows you, and for those of you who perhaps saw the Herald, I don't know if you did, about a week or so ago, this is what's happened on a beach on the North Shore. Because the stormwater drains on the North Shore empty out onto the beaches. And that's a black sludge at Browns Bay. The area there would feed from commercial, residential and industrial area. Think what would happen if something like that happened into the Ahuriri estuary here. I'm concerned that businesses are allowed to discharge contaminants into the area if they have consent. Why the hell should we give them consent to discharge contaminants into an area like that, which is a renowned wetland? In Auckland, where we were, we had to dispose of it by a proper means. My own factory had acetone. We had to have it put into a drum and had to pay to have it carted away and disposed of properly. Although the drain ran right alongside our factory. I think that should happen here, and no company, in my opinion, should get a resource consent and then put contaminants in. I've read an article from overseas where a wetland where migrating birds and local birds were, and it was found that through contamination that some of those birds were becoming infertile. And it could happen here. We can prosecute all we like. It's going to cost a lot in time and money. It's all very well, but more importantly, by the time that the prosecution has come about, the damage has already been done. The contaminants that you're prosecuting for have already got into the system. At a meeting with Napier Mayor about 2 years ago, I broached my concerns about this, and it was mentioned then, the Lake Macquarie system, and it was again mentioned in the Bay Buzz magazine on the 29th of May 2015, wherein the Napier CEO, Wayne Jack, was reported as saying it's a similar concept to what we want to apply here in the Ahuriri catchment. Where's the action? I personally know the kayak hiring business in Pandora Pond has been affected by discoloration and contaminants, and the potential customers have been put off from doing any water activities on those occasions. And just imagine the chaos if on the eve of, on the day of the Iron Maori, the Ahuriri waters were deemed to be not safe for swimming in. We'd have another fiasco like McLean Park, and that would go well beyond Hawke's Bay. I suggested having a school undertake a study, because this happened in the area where I was, on North Shore, of the Pandora Pond, and I understand it may have already been mentioned to council members. Not only to look at the water quality, but to look at the mud and the drains that enter into Pandora Pond. And the study should look at, in my opinion, the composition of the mud in set areas. They could set out areas where they could study every few months. Look at the water snails, the crabs, the flounder, other marine life and plant life that live in there, to determine if they have an uptake of heavy metals or other contaminants. As I said, contaminants in other areas that I've read about has led to the birds becoming infertile, or some of them. I also read an American report on wastewater treatment of an American city, whereby the discharged water after treatment was of better purity than the water being supplied to the town's residents. So certainly it's possible, but I can see that it'll be very costly. Pardon me. Pandora is recognised as a safe area in which to teach pupils, and a lot of schools use it, for boating and water safety schools. It'll be a travesty if that facility was lost to the pupils. I personally support an increase in the regional council rates, even though as a superannuation accumulated increases right across all kinds of things. They do hit our pocket, which is not bottomless. But I, along with others, trust that if the rate increase is passed, that we'll see something concrete and our money won't be swallowed up by administrative costs. Pardon me. My comments are intended to be constructive, and I trust they're received in the same manner.
We don't have time for questions. You did use your 10 minutes. Well done, and that was very interesting. That's North Shore's my old stomping ground as well, so I'm very interested in that.
I lived there for 60 years. Believe me, I wouldn't eat the flounder and mullet.
In Milford.
My comments there.
So thank you very much. Really appreciate
Thank you for the time.
Your thought and your concerns about the estuary too. Really appreciate people are thinking about it.
I go underwater flounder spearing there, so.
Thank you. Shelley. Thank you, Shelley. Call out. Mike, you're going to... Shelley?
Yep. Hi, Leanne. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
I'm good. Not too bad. Kia ora mai.
Kia ora, Shelley.
Yeah, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Taranaki te maunga, ko Urunui te awa, ko Tokomaru te waka, ko Urunui te marae, ko Ngāti Mutunga te iwi, Ngā Hamoa te iwi, ko Shelley Burnfield, taku ingoa. Kia ora koutou.
Now, Shelley, you're aware we have 10 minutes, and if you want council to answer questions, you have to do it within that 10 minutes as well.
Okay.
Okay, so you've got
Sounds
10
good.
minutes. The floor is yours. Right,
Thank you.
I'm pressing the button now. Okay.
I'd just like to acknowledge our CHB representative, Debbie Hewitt. Thank you. Good to see you. And there's a couple of other faces in the room that I know, and some I don't. I live in Takapo. I'm a resident of Central Hawke's Bay virtually all my life. I did a stint in Australia. My background is local government and also social policy and social services. I'm also a district councillor down in CHB, just newly elected last year. So I'll take it that the submission's actually read. So really I'm here to put a face to names and put a face to the name. To my name, and a good chance to meet all of the regional councillors in one place, actually. So we've got the staff response to my submission, and it's not a district council submission. This is a personal submission from myself, but I can't divorce my other hat of being a councillor. So we've got the staff response, which is really fantastic, and the staff response says that we can work together with the community to come up with some solutions, which is really good. The one thing that the staff response does not talk about is the super gold card free travel scheme that Hastings and Napier residents can access. And
a couple of those around this table, you know.
Surely not that many. I can't see any, actually. So I understand, and I might be completely off track here, but I understand that the Super Gold Card travel scheme is funded regionally to the regional council. Is that? Yeah.
It's yeah. Hi, Shelley. I'm Alan Dick. I'm Transport Chair.
Kia ora, Alan.
It's basically funded by government, but supported by the targeted rate from the regional council. And if a scheduled bus service was established in Central Hawke's Bay, then anyone with a gold card would be entitled to free fare between 9 and 3 during the day. And the reality is that, of course, your mayor is on our transport committee.
Yes.
And we were just talking about this on Friday. A trial was done some years ago, which was unsuccessful. But as you've said, or someone said, times change, and it's probably about time for us to consider another trial.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. Oh, right. Well, we're almost there, I think. Are there any?
Okay, thanks, Shelley.
Questions?
Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Shelley, kia ora. It was interesting. When I read through your particular submission, I got invited to hear the chief, or CEO of the LTNZ last week. Councillor Dick and I attended that meeting, and I took the opportunity to ask the question about public transport between our outlying centres, Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay, and Hastings and Napier, because of the centralisation of services over the last 30 or 40 years. And he was very receptive to that idea of getting something done, and actually your mayor, Alex, her worship Alex, stood up and said that there was some scheme going on at Pronga in terms of the community communicating through social media to jack up rides to go somewhere and else like that. So in terms of re-looking at things, yeah, absolutely, I think that would be a great idea because the technology has moved on, and certainly that was the message I got from the CEO of LTNZ. So he left it in the capable hands of the chair of the Transport Committee, Councillor Dick, to be looking at something like that.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Sorry, Councillor Bailey. Thank you for that. Yes,
Neil.
Yeah.
You want to answer that?
No, I think that's great. I was just going to say that I have been speaking to Mayor Alex Walker down in CHB, and she's very supportive and doing her best to get regionally and nationally recognised.
You can tell her we missed her today. She was on our list, but she didn't turn up. Neil, but
yes.
Apologies.
Kia ora, Shelley, and welcome.
Thank you.
Hope your colleagues catch the bug and come along here too. Shelley, do you think the Central Hawke's Bay community and ratepayers particularly would be amenable to a targeted rate for transport, and particularly given the fact that due to numbers, the contribution would have to be probably twice what it is for a trip than we would expect, say, between Napier and Hastings? What's your how do you think this?
So you're talking about a fare or a
targeted rate?
District
yes.
rates or regional rates?
A targeted rate for Central Hawke's Bay ratepayers.
Yeah.
For that purpose. Your submission is highlighting the need for transport.
Definitely.
The method is a targeted rate. What do you think the appetite is in your area?
Well, we haven't really been speaking about a targeted rate with the different groups that I've spoken to. So I'm talking about the elderly, senior citizens, age concern, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what the appetite would be. I think definitely paying a fare at some stage, but really we talked about the super gold card. That's a big thing down in our neck of the woods, because our elders can't use their super gold card for anything. Like there's no businesses, nothing.
You'd have to have a bus service for them to use it.
Yes, yes. No, but there's also it can be used in retail and things like that. So it's not just a bus service, but I'm talking about a bus service here. I don't know, you'd have to ask the public. We'd have to go and do a feasibility study and do a bit of a survey, I'd say.
Well, Mr. Chairman, sorry, that's why you do a trial. You do a trial and you determine through that the level of demand. And if the level of demand is there, then the trial can turn into a permanent service. But then someone's got to pay the local share, and that's where a targeted rate comes in. But the first thing is do your trial and see if there's actual demand there.
Thank you.
Yes, so my reaction to your submission is along those lines, that it's overdue for us to have a fresh assessment of what the demand is, whether that's via trial, survey, whatever the mechanism best to do that. But I'm not as sure about the targeted rate because government agencies have made a decision. Social service agencies, health agencies have made a decision to centralize what they offer in Hastings and to some extent Napier. I don't think we should penalize residents of the region who live further afield of those centers of service provision. Every resident should have equal access to those services. And my own view is that if anybody living in Porangahau should find it as easy to get to the DHB or some social service agency or WINS or wherever as someone who lives in Mahora. That would be my initial reaction, but I think it's overdue to understand that demand. I hear from a member of my family that there are a lot of folks that are involved in what she does who simply cannot get to Hastings to have the family consultations and take part in the various services that are available.
Thank you, Councillor Belford, and I think you've pretty much summed it up. In every social needs analysis that has been done over the last 10 or 15 years, transport always comes out in the top 3. It's a big issue down in Central Hawke's Bay.
Do you got a question, Mr. Moy?
Well, just there are
got a
one or
gold
two.
card?
Yes, I have actually. Getting it in 10 years' time. There are some businesses using the gold card. Fleming's Electrical.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I understand at Leopard Hotels prices half price more points.
Well, I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Shelley? Well, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity. Good to meet you.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. I see that. I saw him sitting there. I thought he'd be up, but I see it's Richard Khan. So, Richard, are you here? Are you fronting it, today? Yeah. Yes, you're ready. Thanks. Well, the boss sitting back here, is he? Oh, you got a video, have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, not a video, it's just a PowerPoint.
Oh, PowerPoint, okay. So, well, Richard, before you, I'd like to welcome you here. We got 10 minutes, and you can use the whole 10 minutes, it's your time, but if you want councillors you have to give them a bit of time, otherwise they'll,
You give me a warning ding at 1 minute to go.
Do you want that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you a ding at 1 minute to go.
Okay, thank you.
You're the first one to ask.
Just tap on this one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, you tell me when you're ready.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is this photoshopped?
No. Thank you, Mr.
Stop
Chairman.
interrupting, please.
Good afternoon, councillors and members of the public. My name is Richard Kahn, and I'm the current chairman of the West Shore Residents and Development Association, and I would like to show you some photos and present some additional information in support of our written submission. This submission has been a team effort by members of our association. I have lived in Hawke's Bay for over 60 years, except for the time I spent at university and working overseas. I have worked as a consulting research engineer for the past 37 years. For decades, the Residents Association has been at loggerheads with the Napier City Council and the Port over the erosion issue, so much so that the Port has at least one technical report on the causative factors of erosion at West Shore under lock and key. They will only release this report when someone dares to take the Port to the Environment Court. I was reminded of this by the Port CEO at a meeting I attended with the Port management last month. We are conscious of the fact that the Port is owned by all Hawke's Bay ratepayers, so this senseless infighting is wasting everyone's time and money. What has been achieved at the southern end of West Shore Beach in the last 30 years? Nothing, except acrimony and a huge pile of paper. We are all in this together, the residents of West Shore, the visitors to the beach, the Napier City Council, the Port and the Regional Council. So our collective goal should be to find a sensible, affordable solution that addresses erosion at the southern end of the beach. You may be thinking, why tackle this issue now when there is a Coastal Strategy Committee working on the same topic? Last Tuesday, I attended the public drop-in session at the West Shore Surf Club and observed the generalised nature of the proposed solutions for West Shore, in particular the intertidal sand nourishment option. It seemed odd to me that the offshore sandbar concept was not specifically shown, considering the 2003 GIB report was provided to everyone on the Coastal Strategy Committee 3 months ago. We are concerned that the specific solution of an offshore sandbar may be overlooked as part of the decision-making process if those involved do not fully understand how the sandbar concept works. One of our goals is to ensure the sandbar concept is given full, adequate consideration to enable it to be fully understood by all those involved, as well as the councillors here today who are not directly involved in the Coastal Strategy Committee. On page 3 of our written submission, under the topic of beach sand, the following is written. West Shore used to be the largest and the best sandy beach between Clifton and Tongoia. It used to have very high amenity value. It was safe and accessible for everyone, from toddlers to the elderly. The beach was like this for about 50 years, from 1931 through to the early 1980s. The beach was resilient to storms and big swells. In August 1974, huge 7-metre waves were recorded off the port breakwater. A state of emergency was declared in Tiawonga, Hamuana and East Clive when they were inundated with seawater from the high seas, whereas West Shore Beach was hardly affected. By the mid-1980s, the sand loss from the beach was noticeable. By the 1990s, the sand was disappearing at an alarming rate and has continued to do so up to the present day. For the last couple of months, we've been advertising in the Napier and Hastings community papers, asking the public if they have any old photos of West Shore Beach in their family albums, especially photos with the boiler in the background. The response has been fantastic, especially since we can date these photos accurately from the age of the people in the photos. Here are some of the photos we've obtained in chronological order. A photo from 1939 shows you the boiler high and dry above the sand. And the man standing on there, he is also the man in the right-hand photo in 1947. And the person I got the photo from is the little girl on the right-hand side, because that is her father. What these photos show us is that the southern end of the beach was accreting with sand up until about 1980. And when the accretion stopped, it didn't take long, and then the accretion stopped. It didn't take long after that for the sand to start eroding. What's this thing's going berserk? In that photo you can see that the sand is probably at its highest level, and it's about 1980, almost completely covering the boiler. And then the sand started disappearing. Today at low tide, this is 94, 2003, 2010, and here we are today. Today at low tide, the boiler is always surrounded by water. This represents a very significant lowering of the sandy beach. In calm weather, the beach is still sandy, but has a much steeper profile. This slide shows how the beach profile W44, adjacent the boiler, has changed since 1984. This is the earliest date the Hawke's Bay Regional Council have records for this location. The reason for the sudden change is hard to explain, since there appears to have been no significant change in the natural environment at the time. However, an event of significance around that time was the widening and deepening of the shipping channel. We can find no other explanation why the sand was gradually building up at the southern end of the beach for 50 years after the earthquake. Then, in a short space of time, the sand stopped building up and started eroding away. This slide is page 11 from the GIB 2003 report and shows the location of some of the beach profile measurement stations. It is also attached at the end of your document. Beach profile HB13 is 300 metres north of the boiler between Knott Street and Naomi Street. This slide shows beach profile 13. You can see the horizontal distance is going out to the 500 metre mark down here. That's 500 metres. The profile lines converge at about 400 metres. This is going to be too hard to control. Which is also about 300 metres from the low tide mark. The water depth here is about 4 metres relative to low tide. You can see where all the sand has eroded away. It's all in this area here. The erosion is confined to a reasonably narrow band close to the shore. 2 months ago, there were moderate swells from Cyclone Cook. The swells ran up and over the crest of the shingle bank and chewed out a significant notch in the seabed at the low tide mark. You can see this here. This is the big notch that it's chewed out here. If you look at the horizontal distance between the toe of the yellow line at low tide and the toe of the green line, which is 1975, you can see that this distance is about 70 metres. If you stand at the water's edge at low tide now, you can see that in 1975, the sandy beach was 3 metres higher than it is today. That's the height of here up to there. So if you stand at low tide now, that's where the beach used to be up there. That's a huge amount of sand to be eroded away in such a short period of time. The reason why the black 2012 line shows more erosion than the current yellow line is because the 2012 profile was taken in September, after all the winter swells had chewed away the shingle bank, whereas the 2017 profile was taken just 2 months ago, before the winter swells will chew out the bank in the next 4 months. As was mentioned in our written submission, 1 minute. As was mentioned in our written submission under item 6, both Dr. Gibb and the coastal scientists at ASR recommended using the sand dredged from the shipping channel to form a shore parallel offshore bar in 4 to 6 metres of water. And Dr. Komar endorsed this concept as well. It was also recommended the sandbar be made wider at the south end, creating a wedge tail, which will encourage the waves to refract further southwards and so reduce the northerly drift of the sand on the beach. The ultimate goal, as Dr. Gibbs so eloquently puts it, is to encourage the sand to whirl onto the beach, as described on page 25 of his report, which is also attached at the end of this document. Now, quickly nick over to the next page. Hence, if ocean-based nourishment is going to work, it will be necessary to find an economic way of doing this that doesn't rely on the intermittent nature of sourcing sand from the shipping channel every 3 to 5 years, when the port needs to clear the shipping channel. When the effects of rising sea levels are taken into account, this solution is likely to be the most sustainable of any of the soft engineering options currently being considered by the Coastal Strategy Committee. Today, the goal of our submission is to seek approval for your technical staff to investigate the feasibility of doing a sand transfer trial at West Shore. In the event that this project is economically feasible to do, we would then make a request for contestable funding through the 2018 long-term plan consultation process next year. And I've listed our 5 bullet points from our written submission, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was very informative, Richard. Really appreciated that. And I noticed that Councillor Bevan was listening intently, and he's the chair of our Coastal Committee. So I guess we're going to want to talk to him about that, because you brought a whole lot of stuff.
Yep.
So thank you very much. You were our final submission for the day. So we'll break for a cup of tea and then come back.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask what you propose to do, taking into account that we've heard 27 submissions, we've yet to deliberate on them, we've yet to look at 110 submissions which were not spoken to. My suggestion to you is that we've done a day's work, that the very best thing is to go away at this point and reflect, and then have a process of working through the deliberation on the heard submissions and the 110 unheard submissions in one session, which probably would take about 3 hours.
What's Council's view on that?
Personally, I think it's a very sensible suggestion, because we do have to go through the unheard submissions, we have to do the proper deliberation. This draws, in my view, a natural line in the work.
I'm inclined to agree, Chair. We simply cannot do the verbal submissions we've had plus the others in the time that we've got left today. It's 3:15 now. By the time we get back here after a couple, it's going to be 3:30 or later. So I think we should come back tomorrow or set another day.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Wednesday?
Why not tomorrow?
It's in the diary.
I'm the same.
Wednesday?
Sorry?
Wednesday's tank.
What about, Chair, as a suggestion, need some help from Leanne, come back and deliberate at the beginning of the workshop day on the 21st, which I think everyone's got in their diary, and advertise an extraordinary meeting?
The only problem that I can see with that is that only gives staff 1 day to turn around for you to approve the annual plan on the 28th.
And another day.
1 day, 1 week.
No, 1 week. It's 1 week, not 1 day. From the 20th.
No, but the agenda has to go out on that Thursday that week in order to meet statutory requirements.
So what are people's plans? We did have it penciled out for tomorrow morning. Is there any? It's hard.
Do tomorrow morning.
You can't.
Because when it was changed to 1 day, I produced the other day, as you do.
Same, Chair.
Based on what my grandmother said.
Thursday?
Tuesday. Tuesday I'm unavailable.
I have the Southern Cell assessment running all day.
The only day we're going to get everyone back together, Chair, is Wednesday next week.
Sorry, Richard, this has got nothing to do with you.
It's fine. Just carry on.
You are right. I think everyone's got Wednesday next week, and I think it would take us the whole morning. You are right, Alan.
Sorry?
It'll take us a whole morning to do this properly.
Justice to it. We
To
certainly
do
can't do
justice
just to it today.
No, we can't. So can we get around your problems if we do it next Wednesday? Your logistic problems, administration problems.
What about Monday or Tuesday next week?
Tuesday's the Māori committee up in Warwick.
Monday I'm out.
Wednesday's the day.
Wednesday's
the- Why-
Every Wednesday, you go drive yourself mad, try to find a date in between.
What is the other, what is the agenda for Wednesday?
We were going to do a workshop, but I'm not sure. I'm not
So
sure.
can I just ask what the reason was we couldn't do this Wednesday, the 14th?
Tank. And they have to do that tank meeting.
Yeah, because I didn't have any commitments, I filled my diary.
Yes.
We got a reasonable, useful things.
No, we are on Wednesday the 21st. Can you manage that logistically?
Yeah, I'm not.
My administration, you said that would be very hard. Otherwise, it will be hard.
Have you got the CEO beside you?
Paul, can we?
Yeah. The problem is, Mr. Chairman, I mean, the papers for the annual plan to be adopted on the 28th don't go out until, or will they go out on Thursday
Friday.
morning? So, I mean, there's, as you know, I mean, an annual plan is a big document. You got to.
Could they go out on Friday morning?
Yes, with through Leanne, with a waiver of council.
Oh, well, we'll get that.
Days.
I think that you, I think
So
you.
if you do it Thursday morning, you've got Thursday afternoon, sorry, Wednesday morning, you've got Wednesday afternoon as well as Thursday.
And Thursday.
Yeah,
if it gets
And
away
the other
from
thing
us.
is that I would have thought staff would have taken the view that this would be a process of guided democracy. You'd have a very clear idea of what the outcomes were, and you'd have several drafts already in the system. So it's plan A, plan B, plan C.
Yeah, there's
Just
quite a lot
little
like
bit
that.
the Dalton
Okay, we are going to resolve. We are going to do it on Wednesday morning.
Kiwi horse.
And thank you, Alan.
Which
The
Wednesday?
21st. Wednesday the 21st. So it's Wednesday next week.
And Mr. Chairman, can the papers go out to council on the Friday, which means it's just less time to read?
Do you need a resolution for that, or just? Does everyone? Does
Leanne,
everyone
would you need a resolution for understanding
waiver?
orders? No? No, you don't.
Resolve.
Can I just have a show of hands?
Resolve to
that-
adjourn.
We have a waiver that we're going to be one day late getting the papers out, and we resolve to adjourn the meeting, and I agree. So thank you very much, councillors. Sorry? Wednesday the 21st. You haven't got the hearing aid in yet. You were going on about being aged before. Okay, I just want to thank councillors for their attention today, because most of them, the presentations were very interesting, and it requires concentration, and it got concentration. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate everyone who came along and did submissions and took your time to do so. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.